Yeah.
Music is a universal language in a way. Every culture, community, people really that's ever existed, any kind of human society listens to music or has had some sort of music. And we live in the golden age of music. It's an age where top charting songs can be composed by a professional studio or a guy in his bedroom. And with such ease of access from things like the internet and just the sheer amount of music that comes out nowadays, trends and genres and just interests can move really fast. Music nowadays is more accessible than ever before to the average person, and that's listening to it and making it. An article actually from Billboard.com on the success of electronic music refers to a study led by Nielsen Music showing that electronic music related events are the only US live music events showing year-over-year increases, rising as high as 3% per year for club events. And that's a lot of growth. And it's important to identify and understand why that growth happens. And I think we can appreciate the kind of music that we listen to a little bit more because of it. So it's important to understand how modern music's made. And the sounds we hear in modern music are created all sorts of different ways, including digital and analog synthesizers, which are the keyboard-looking things that have like crazy knobs and sliders and everything like that on it. People can sample sounds where you can literally just record a sound and process that and play it, whatever. And then obviously instruments and recording. And really what I'm getting at is there's a lot of different ways to record sound, but for centuries there's only one, and that's just instruments, and not even recording at the point, but just instruments and people playing. Now we have so many tools that we can access and use to get different sounds and crazy things that nobody would have ever thought was possible just with all the new things that I had mentioned before, the synthesizers, things like that. Apologies. Anyway, limitless possibilities with sound. And then on top of that, you even have effects, like plugins and stuff. I'll explain a little bit where that would come from, but people, everybody knows what like reverb is. You may have heard that term of like an echo or something on a sound. You hear that all the time. That's added digitally. You don't generally just have like echo on stuff. That's through your whatever. And so the place where you can take all these sounds, and I talk about the plugins and all these things, you can compose that within something called a digital audio workshop or a DAW. Music that's any kind of music, not even just electronic music, will end up in these DAWs just because all music you listen to is digital nowadays, unless you're a vinyl collector or something like that. It all is going to end up on iTunes or on Spotify or something like that, so it has to go in the digital world. And so even bands that are traditional, a rock band or something like that, they're going to record and it's going to end up digital and they'll change it like that. So it's straightforward to see how these modern technologies affect our music in that way, but how does the sound design and the sounds that we hear in the music today actually affect its popularity and these trends and genres that we see so much? And so a good example to bring up is the abundance of what I call a vocal synth. And if anybody's familiar with DJ Snake or his song last year called Lean On, if anybody knows, it's got, like I said, this vocal synth lead, and it's like a vowel-y almost sound. It sounds like a human saying something or like a phrase, but it's modulated to sound like an instrument. And the reason you hear a sound like this so much with newer music is because it similarly replicates the human voice. And the human voice, the reason we enjoy singing in so much in our songs, the human ear has evolved and learned to listen in very intently to human voices because we were raised by our parents, we're taught in English, language and everything. It's very important to hear a human voice. So when you're hearing that in a song, even if it's not words and lyrics, you can still fill a lot of air in that song and make it a lot more interesting for people's ears, if that makes sense. And let's see here. So, of course, a lot of those sounds you hear are all digital, things like that. But even the instruments and drums you hear are digital. Guitars and pianos, any sort of instrument you could think of can be recreated in these digital ways that I was mentioning before. And it also is a big bonus to producers who do it in that fashion, because they can, in a sense, play every instrument for their songs and make it really, creative and unique in their style. So when you're talking about the songs and the precise, image that they want this song to represent, you start getting into the genres. And so genres are generally defined by a tempo, arrangement, or the style of the song, but the sounds also play pretty heavily into that as well. Think of piano or violin kind of describing classical music, or guitar describing rock music, things like that. But genres today are a little less explicit than just classical and rock. It's a lot of one type of music and then subgenres and then all the different little things. And you can find probably new genre music every day if you wanted to. There's no universal way to distinguish actual genres, so that's why it's been such a, not an issue, but a, budding thing of seeing all these new types of music and how do we label that and know, what we want to listen to, what to look up if we want to hear that music. And I think that only speaks more to the importance of trying to understand and, get the intricacies of all this music understood. When it comes down to it, music is music, and every kind of sound and genre is subjective of taste, and knowing what you're hearing sometimes can help influence that taste. So if you can appreciate a little bit more of the music that you're listening to and understand where it comes from, you can, as I said, appreciate it and listen to it in a different way than just maybe the feeling that it was meant for, but you could say like, oh, that's a very interesting approach and things that they took to that music. So appreciate it, understand it, and keep it alive and evolving.
Okay.